Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, junto a mí directamente desde TNA Wrestling. Señores y señores, Simon Gotch llega acá por primera vez a Lucha Libre Online. Simon, it's an honor to have you, sir. How are you doing today?
Oh, splendid. Yourself?
All good, sir. All good here in Puerto Rico. Ironically, good weather and everything. So glad seeing you. Man, you're going to New Orleans, but there's a lot of things happening in your career as of lately. Let's start by the obvious. Nobody expected Simon Gotch appearing on TNA Wrestling, jumping a barricade, and did what he did. What brought you to TNA? So you've been everywhere. You've been in several companies, mainstream all around the world. Now you decided that TNA will be your home. Right now, the brand rebranded, came back to his origins, and everything is a roller coaster ride. But in this case, everything is going up, 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 up constantly. TNA is it's in its best moment. What made you choose TNA as your home?
Well, to sort of answer your initial question, much like the Spanish Inquisition, my primary tool is surprise. So I thought that the best way for me to make an entrance anywhere is via surprise. As for what drove me to TNA, I mean, inevitably, it's always about doing what's right. And in my mind, I've been wronged by TNA and Josh Alexander for the better part of 5 years, and I wanted that to be made right. And TNA has been gracious, of course, in the aftermath of my actions that I may or may not have taken. I'm not admitting them legally. I'm simply stating that if I did take any actions and TNA decided that they wish to not press charges, I appreciate that. But the fact that they've given me a platform to handle this issue is much appreciated. And now it's really the ball's in the court of Josh Alexander if he's going to rise to the occasion and either prove me right or prove me wrong.
I'm going to say something very quick in Spanish before you continue. It's the 23rd. Este próximo 23, New Orleans, Louisiana, va a estar recibiendo No Surrender de TNA. Y el 24 de febrero tienen el Fallout. Hay mucho latino en esa área. Hay mucho mexicano, mucho boricua, mucho colombiano. Todos los hermanos latinos, toda la familia lleguen el 23 de febrero a New Orleans, Louisiana para No Surrender y el 24 para el Fallout. Y estamos en camino para Rebellion, que va a ser el 20 de abril en The Palms, Las Vegas, Nevada. Para No Surrender, los boletos están disponibles en eventbrite.com. Para el caso de Rebellion también están disponibles en TNA directamente en su website. Y ambos los pueden consumir a través de TNA Plus o de Fight TV. Simon, apologies, just needed to plug in that right there because you're not facing or you're not, going toe-to-toe or aiming for a single person. You're not aiming for an easy wrestler, to say it that way. Former world champion, great talent inside the ring, expert in submission, but so are you. Very wise technically. How does this, makes you feel like you're facing someone at your level?
Well, it's not necessarily about facing someone at my level. It's about, I need to know that Josh is the person he claims to be. So for the last better part of 5 years, as I addressed previously, I had been edited out of Josh's story. I was the one that wrestled him the night he got his TNA contract. I was the one that pushed him in the ring and made him fight as hard as he did, that he actually was signed to his first professional contract in his entire career, a contract that allowed him to re-enter the US, to travel internationally, something he'd been barred from doing due to visa violations. And as much as, a competitor, you want to win. You want to win every match because the more you win, the more money you make, the more opportunities you get, the more money you make, the more you win. And he won. I'm man enough to admit he defeated me cleanly. But to leave me out, to never mention that, and we've talked publicly since then, and it never comes up. He never has brought up the fact that I was the one that wrestled him that night. And that's something I take very personally, because you basically said I did this on my own. I earned that contract purely by existing and not because I went in the ring with someone who made me fight as hard as they could, who made me give everything I had to give. One of the greatest failings of a person in professional wrestling is when they cannot give 100%. For whatever reason, when they can't get in the ring and give everything they have, every part of their soul, every part of their body, every drop of blood that flows through their veins, when they can't do that, and they fall short professionally because everyone says, I see nothing in you, that is a tragedy. And I allowed Josh, through my actions, to show exactly what he was made of, that he was the Iron Man he was painted to be. And I was never given the basic respect of even being mentioned by TNA or by Josh. And that's something I take very personally.
Simon, from the competition standpoint, you are, again, a very competitive athlete. You've been everywhere. And TNA's roster, obviously, your main focus is Josh Alexander. You explained us why. He basically erased you from his life story, and it's not fair. But if you see the roster, it's in its best spot. It's in its best moment. Like, for the last 10 years, in my opinion, this is the best roster TNA or Impact has ever had. You've had people that are top tier athletes competing in the knockouts division, in the X division, in the tag team division, digital media division, world title picture. Like, everywhere is simply packed by mainstream superstars. You have the opportunity, if granted the contract, if granted the opportunity, to face basically anyone you want among those people inside the roster sitting down on a table. It's Matthew Rehwoldt. You know Matt very well. You've known him for several years. First, how do you feel having the opportunity to compete on a company while he's sitting down on the table doing the thing he for sure loves, which is commentating? And secondly, how do you feel once you saw him after so many years or months, or depending on how much time you miss each other?
Oh, it only been a few months. We've actually done some smaller shows together, teaming again. He does wrestle outside of TNA, but I think he does it more for sort of. It's a way to keep busy. I think when he finds something in wrestling that he's interested in, he'll come up behind the commentary table permanently. But he's just so damn good behind it. It's hard to pull someone away from that. But I do hope that at some point, maybe in TNA, maybe in another big stage, he'll want to gear up again and really show the world, because I don't think people understand how good he is. It's one of the big tragedies of our time as a tag team, was I don't think that anyone really understood individually how good we were. And he's phenomenally athletic. It's once again something that goes overlooked. He was a gymnast in high school, and a lot of the stuff you see younger talent, people like Ace Austin, people like the Rascals, even someone like Will Ospreay, all the more athletic things you see done, Matt's capable of a lot of that stuff. But it tends to go under the radar, and I hope at some point he gets to break it out and really show people. As far as the rest of the roster goes, I mean, there are people like Kushida, the Machine Guns, all sorts of talent, and even then, because of TNA's interactions with companies internationally, AAA in Mexico, New Japan, there's opportunity to actually, through TNA, face some bigger name talent, some more international talent. And that's always something that's appealing. I always like a new challenge. And obviously, sometimes people come for longer stints in TNA, and the opportunities to work with them there. And even talent from England, the UK, Europe in general, there's a lot of other people coming in for TNA for that. Yeah, it's really, even if you look at just the raw roster, just the core people that are in the company under contract, it's a phenomenal roster, you're correct. But the people who they have access to, who come in, even if it's just for a show, is every bit as good. And it's always top tier talent.
So let's discuss it briefly. So, for example, TNA at this point, as you mentioned, works several partnerships all around the world. Among them is Lucha Libre AAA. We saw the agreement. Dorian Roldan was at the first event. He was at the first event of TNA's rebranding back in the Palms of Vegas, Nevada. And interestingly, we saw Hijo del Vikingo. We've been seeing people like Black Taurus in the past, or Laredo Kid, or several talents from TNA coming to, from AAA coming to TNA. But we've also seen several TNA talent waving that TNA flag in Mexico on behalf of TNA with Lucha Libre AAA. Is that something Simon Gotch is interested in, being that ambassador for TNA, if granted the opportunity at a Latin American forum like AAA, for example?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of very skilled wrestlers in Mexico that didn't get enough credit. Obviously, some are longer standing stars. People, I mean, Dr. Wagner Jr. is still out there killing it. He's still amazing.
Brilliant.
Yeah, right. And that would be alone be great. Both of his sons are also awesome.
Gotcha.
Wagner the third is actually the GHC heavyweight champion right now, and then he's got that big old hoss of a boy. His brother is just killing it everywhere he goes. You've got people like Ricky Marvin who are still, again, Ricky's one of those underrated luchadors who's just out there. Even, Negro Casas still active, still going at it. And again, Negro's got to be pushing 60. And I've made a point in another interview that you look at somebody like, it won't be long before you have guys in their 60s who are still just out there absolutely killing it. And Negro's probably not far. Like, if he's not 60 yet, he's not far off, but that man still can go. And I think it's great to see that there are talent in Lucha Libre that think internationally. I think that's one of the problems that a lot of people, I wouldn't say really a problem, more of a judgment people have against Lucha Libre is it's a very closed style to a lot of people. That if you're a luchador, you stay in Mexico or you stay in Puerto Rico. You don't really travel outside. You might do some tours, but you stay. And I think there are some more internationally minded talent who've done it. Like Black Taurus is a great example of one. Vikingo is a great example of one where they went, I want to go everywhere and show everyone what I'm capable of. And even some of the Americans have been learning Lucha Libre over the last 30 years. We're getting some truly amazing. I mean, Gringo Loco. If you've ever seen Gringo Loco on any GCW shows, I mean, he is obscene in his ability. Like he's one of those. I'd actually say he's probably the modern day La Parka if you really want to think about it. And La Parka is another one, still going, still plugging away, still kicking ass. And you see someone like Gringo Loco, who's basically the American version of La Parka, where he's a bigger dude, but he can do all this athletic stuff. And he can go through a match the way that a lot of the smaller luchadors can, as well as going through a match the way a lot of the bigger guys can. It's insane, and it's exciting to think about being able to compete with people like that.
Simon, professional wrestling itself, it's a field where family and friends are very nervous about what can happen to that loved one. What was your family's reaction once they understood the decision you took to follow this pathway as a professional wrestler? Did they support it since the beginning? Did it took some time?
My mom and my brother did. My mom took the stance that I've never been conventional. I've never done anything in the conventional way. So why should I pick a conventional career? My brother, he and I watched wrestling together when we were kids, and that was part of what spurred me into the field. So he was all in on it. And that was all that really mattered to me, was that they cared and they supported me as best they could. And I mean, I've been fortunate injury wise. I've actually been very healthy throughout the majority of my career. Though I do remember maybe my second or third match, I got thrown into a wall and I split my head open. I didn't want to tell my mom. I mean, I'm 19, 20 years old at this point. I'm still really young. So I go to I go to a 7-Eleven. I bought a tube of super glue. I took a shower, cleaned up my head. Oh yeah. I squeezed the super glue in the hole and I pressed it down until it stayed closed. And I wore a baseball cap for about a week to try and hide the fact that I had this chunk of glue in my hair. And I finally told my mom what happened. And she's like, yeah, I got suspicious when you started wearing a hat inside the house at all hours. So, but she's always been very supportive. To this day, she still is very supportive. And I think it helps a lot when your family actually does care. I know a lot of people can be distanced from their families because they do this, both, their direct family and their extended family, but I've been very fortunate in that.
Thankfully, man, to say this where you're blessed. Before we go to our last question, just want to thank you and Ross for the opportunity. Let's remind our fans in Spanish one more time. El 23 de febrero, No Surrender de TNA, y el 24 de febrero, el Fallout directamente en New Orleans, Louisiana. Estamos en época de Mardi Gras, vamos a pasarla bonito, date 2 o 3 cervecitas, come comida buena, pásala bonito en familia, disfruta de buena lucha libre. Los boletos están disponibles ahora mismo en eventbrite.com. Y el 20 de abril es Rebellion, estamos Road to Rebellion directamente, ya mismito, no me coman ansia, es el próximo gran pay-per-view, pero este próximo 23 ya hay un pay-per-view disponible, No Surrender, lo pueden disfrutar a través de Fight TV y a través de TNA Plus, y los boletos en eventbrite.com. Simon, again, thankful for the opportunity. Last but not least, what's the message to the fans out there in Louisiana, in New Orleans, in all that area, especially the Latin American community, which there's a lot of us in the southern of the United States. What's the message for them so they can tune in, No Surrender, or they can go in person and experience TNA, new era, new rebranding, new talent, new air. It feels completely different with the same TNA feeling we loved back then from the mid 2000s. What's the message from them for them?
I'd say that professional wrestling gives people an opportunity to peer into a world where we can be more. That's the nature of sport. The reason sport has value and the reason professional wrestling has value is because in a single moment, and there will be more than a few of them at No Surrender, you can elevate people to a better place. You can have them experience something that is more than the day-to-day grind of just this. And no matter how bad your day, no matter how hard your life, for those few minutes, you get to experience what it is like to be as close to a god as anyone on earth will ever feel. It is the reason why, and it doesn't matter if it's the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter if it's the World Cup, it doesn't matter if it's No Surrender. People love sport, and it will always make them feel more than they would have felt if they sat at home and just.
Simon, welcome home, man. This is your new home. This is the new opportunity. This is the new you. Let's remind our fans. El 23 de febrero, New Orleans, Louisiana, No Surrender, boletos a la venta en Eventbrite. Pueden hacer clic aquí a la parte de abajo. Vamos a dejarles el link. Hacen clic, llegan ahí directamente. Y el pay-per-view a través de Fight TV y TNA Plus. Let's wrap this up, pero en español. Simon Gotch en directo desde TNA y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online y El Calce, porque en español nadie lo hace mejor. Hasta la próxima.